talk about how do we close.
Sweet.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome back. Episode 2 of Insurance is Not Boring. Xander Wolle and my other host Elijah Corujo here. Uh, I know last time we went a little bit over kind of how our background, how we got to Symmetry, how Symmetry does things. And today we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds of, okay, like what does an insurance appointment look like? What do y'all's day-to-days look like? Kind of just, again, somebody who hasn't been in the insurance industry to give you a little bit of an idea of how we do things.
Hmm. This podcast is for people who are insurance agents, maybe thinking about getting into insurance, young people in sales, and entrepreneurs alike. Before we jump in, I think it's always good to continue to establish street cred because there's a lot of people who have insurance podcasts who built and sold an agency. They're not doing the job anymore. And so, Xander, how much have you sold this week? It's December 13th, Friday the 13th. What are you at for the week so far? We know it fluctuates week to week, but for the people out there listening, how many policies? What is the annual premium so far? Day's not over yet.
Day is not over. This week's been a little slow. I've written 6 apps for 7,300.
You know what's insane is that you're saying that that's a slow week for you because there's people who would give their left kidney to sell that every single week. And cool part is you don't have to do that. You just got to get some leads and do what we're going to teach you. I'm having a good week. The past 2 weeks I got my butt kicked, but the numbers always pay you back. And I'm at 13 applications for just over $16,000 in annual premium.
Heck yeah, brother.
Not all of that's been approved just yet. A couple policies still in underwriting, but we're going to give you some of the nuts and bolts of how we do what we do, maybe some of the metrics. What does an appointment look like? Stuff that you can go and apply to what you do if you're a life insurance agent. So when it comes to insurance, Xander, it's like an equation, right? You need the right amount of leads, right amount of appointments, right amount of activity to get in front of people to talk to. What's your equation look like? I know that's changed over the months since you've been licensed with how many leads you're getting, but
Yeah.
for the people out there curious, like maybe how much are you spending on leads, or how many leads are you getting? How many appointments are you running? Like, what does that look like? Stuff that people could just to give them the specifics.
Yeah, so I mean that's changed over time. And I do want to note, like we're talking primarily about mortgage protection here. It's going to be a little bit different with the different products. Your skill set will obviously change this a bit as well. Um, and also the leads that you're getting. So just I don't want to take us on too much of a tangent, but Symmetry has in-house leads, and I look at where the incentives are. Follow the money is what my dad always told me. And, I've worked third-party leads as well. Their incentive is to sell you more leads, right?
Yep.
And the way Symmetry is set up, the leads are a loss leader for them. They lose money on the leads that the agents purchase from them, and then they make it up in the back end on overrides. So I've found the highest quality leads at Symmetry. I'm working Symmetry leads. I get 20 a week. It's about $830 per week at my contract. That usually shakes out. I get at least 10 appointments out of that, and they obviously stack up a bit. Usually shoot for that, 10 to 15 appointment a week mark. And it'll differ. Like, this week was not, for whatever reason, I got some think about it. I got a couple people who were already in a good spot. And I take a lot of pride in, like, if somebody already has everything that they need, and I'm sitting there and it's like their budget is tight, they've already got plenty of insurance, I'm not going to try and sell them another insurance policy. I'm going to say, you know what? Kudos to
Right.
you for reaching out and thinking about this. But hey, in my professional opinion, you're set, my friend. So, I can
Mm.
sleep well doing that.
I think I want to just hit on that for a second because I think that is just a testament to our system and our process. You can come in here, be a salesperson, And your goal isn't to sell to every single person you talk to.
No.
And if you follow our system, you're not going to be a desperate sales agent with commission breath who's needing to make a commission every single time. Because if you follow our system, right, you're going to get some leads who don't need it. You know, maybe they've got enough coverage or assets. They could do insurance if they want to, but your job is to figure out if they need it. If so, what type of mortgage protection or life insurance is going to fit their needs? How much? Which carrier is going to work best? And the longer you do this, you'll encounter people that you're better off not helping or they don't really need it. And you're a better salesperson to be the one to tell them, hey, based off what you've got, we could do this if you want to, but I don't really think this is something you need at the end of the day. And that just feels good to be able to do.
And
And if you
just
follow,
one
right?
one thing on
Yeah.
that, a lot of times when you tell someone, you're like, I don't think you need this. For some reason, they want it even more. And so then I'm like, I told you, but I'm also not going to sit here and tell you, you can't get it. So it's a funny dynamic that can create.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic because I think a lot of people who are submitting these requests, whether they be online or direct mail or over the phone, however these leads are generated, most of the time it's online. They're expecting you to be a hardball salesman. I've had several conversations with clients who, when we get on the phone, they tell me that they don't want to be hard closed or they don't want to be hard sold because of interactions that they've had with people in the past. And we're going to go over a little bit of what does our process look like. Now, if you become an agent with Symmetry, we go through all kinds of in-depth training. This is not in-depth training. This is just to kind of give you a peek behind the curtain of how many leads are we taking, how many appointments are we running to make the income that we're making as 1099 commission agents in a virtual sales environment, which is pretty cool too. So for me, I'm spending about the same amount a week on leads, between $600 and $800 or so. Some weeks it's a little bit more than others, but I'm getting between 20 and 30 leads a week. Some of those are direct mail where the client got a letter about mortgage protection. That's kind of our bread and butter, what we focus on. It's like life insurance for the house. And about 15 of them are online or digital leads generated through Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. And so we run ads as a company for life insurance, mortgage protection, index universal life, annuities, infinite banking, all of it. We've just kind of found our sweet spot, our niche in mortgage protection. And some free game here. If you're an insurance agent, the temptation a lot of agents get is shiny object syndrome. They want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. They hear about big commissions with annuities, or they hear about an agent with residual Medicare supplement income, or somebody closing 50 grand a month on final expense or what have you. All of it's good. But the truth is, if you're putting all of a little bit of your attention on all of these things, you're going to suck at all of them.
Yep.
And if you want to get good, the best piece of advice I could give you is get advanced at the basics. Mortgage protection is a basic solution to a problem a lot of people have. And it's relatively easy for us to kind of span that gap of showing the client, here's your problem, here's the solution. Let's find a one that fits your budget and then get you approved, versus a lot of these other things are kind of complex sales
Yeah.
and they're awesome, but you should focus on one, get really good at one before you start branching out. That's my 2 cents personally.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I personally went through that a bit, right? Like
Oh, me too, bro.
I came in, I felt like, we talked about the Ego is the Enemy book from last week. If
Yeah.
you haven't read that book, read it because it is a great book. And like, I kind of felt like, I've got this mortgage protection thing figured out. I thought that IULs were kind of a little bit cooler to help people with, right? Felt more like a financial professional. And exactly to your point, there's pros and cons to every single product that there is. And I ended up coming back to mortgage protection. Yeah,
Me
it's
too.
simpler. It's not quite as sexy, but like people need it, right? They have a mortgage, they've got a family. Let's make sure for 85, $120 a month that no one's going to be homeless here. Everyone can wrap their head around that. You don't got to get into explaining, all right, well, this contribution, your cash value is going to look like this. And, you can move that a little bit and you can take a loan from it and then you're pay. It's just, it's so much simpler, and people buy when something is simple and they can understand it. And so
Hmm.
I just love mortgage protection, and it makes sense, right? Symmetry's built a
Yeah.
$500 million a year business off of it.
And we started in 2009, right after the mortgage crisis, too, which is kind of wild. Now,
Yeah.
I was in like fourth or fifth grade when all that went down, so I was not living that, but that's the origins of our company. So when it comes to, oh, and by the way, I told you all how many leads I get. My target for appointments, if you're full time, now this is going to vary company to company, right? There's IMOs out there that encourage you to spend $2,000-3,000 a week on leads and run appointments 6 and 7 days a week. Get in front of 35 people. You could do that, but you're going to run yourself to death and hit burnout in the span of about 2 months, probably. And the cool part is you can make six figures within insurance, which I think is a good goal to start at because it's so achievable. And to hit six figures, at least with our company, we teach people to run about 15 appointments a week.
Yep.
And so I book between 18 and 20. There's some attrition there with cancellations or no shows. But every week I get in front of about 15 families, and that yields 6 to 8 policies per week. And so one of the reasons I like mortgage protection, in addition to it being simple, is you get paid fast. The client gets covered quickly,
Yep.
and most of the time pays you top contract.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're selling final expense or whole life, things like that, index universal life, you're not going to get paid your full comp.
Mm-mm.
And so, just something to think about in your tool belt as an insurance agent. So, hold on, I got a client calling me here. Let me send them a voicemail. So, what should we talk about first, Xander? Like, let's say, all right, you got some leads, you got some appointments on the books. Now what? What's your what would you say is should we talk about like the real system first, or maybe like your mindset going into the appointment?
Yes, because one thing that you're incredible at is you are so consistent. Like every single week I see you, you're making the same dials, you're setting the same amount of appointments, you're having the same amount of sits. And you mentioned kind of I'm having this week, right? You're gonna have weeks that aren't gonna go to the way you expected them to, or the way that you hoped they would. That doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that the clients aren't good, the leads aren't good. It just hasn't been long enough yet, right? Like at Symmetry, we look at everything over a 6 week average, because it
Yep.
takes time for some of these numbers to shake out. So yeah, I think really kind of going over the system and what do you do to get ready for an appointment? How do you run your appointments? And then in the event that things don't go the way that you expected, did you make any changes, or do you come back and say, well, Elijah,
Mm.
I've been doing this for 6 years. I know that it's not me. I just need to do more because the numbers are going to pay me back, as you said earlier.
Yeah, I think doing more is often the solution to for salespeople because it's all a numbers game, right? Like
Yep.
you get in front of enough people and the averages always shake out. Sometimes stuff happens. I think the temptation within sales is to judge how you're doing based off of that day or the
Yep.
day before. Like, oh shoot, I'm having a bad week because yesterday sucked, or I'm having a bad month because I've had a dud week.
Right.
But the first week of December, I think I sold less like 3 grand in premium, really small. I just kept striking out, got a lot of think about it, no shows. The week before that, I think I sold about 3 grand. My average is between 8 and 10,000. And so this week, the numbers owed me.
Yep.
I've sat with 15 families so far. I've got two more appointments today, and we're over 10,000. And so I'm not going to take off next week.
That's the
And so
thing. Yeah.
that's the thing. Like you as an insurance agent, somebody told me this when I was first getting started. You have to get obsessed with the process, not obsessed with the results. If you get emotionally attached to the results, you'll stray away from the process. What I mean by that is like there's a lot of agents who are brand new. They'll get lucky their first week, right? 8 or 10 grand, make a bunch of money, and then take it easy for the next 2 weeks.
Going
They
on
walk away from
vacation.
the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going on a vacation. Like I can't tell you how many times we've had people join our team. They have a really great week, and then we don't hear from them for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then they come back week 3, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have enough money to buy leads." And it's like, "Well, dude, this is your fault. And so,
And kind of to what you're saying there, right? Like for me at least, when I have a big week or a big day or something, I know the numbers. And so I know that it's going to come around. So I need to, while I have that hot hand, I need to set more appointments than usual and run because that means that I'm going to get some no's and some think about it's. And I want to get through that period as quickly as possible so that I can get
yeah.
back to the appointments that do shake out the way we want them to.
Mm. And if you the other piece with it too is like if you're obsessed with the result and you have a bad week and you write 2 grand or 3 grand or you goose egg and you just don't write anything, you're gonna let that affect your emotions in the next appointment or the
Yep.
next week. It's gonna
Yeah.
affect your dial session and you're gonna come off more needy to the
Yeah.
client and you're not gonna be in a position where you're in the best place mentally to just serve that family, which is what we're here to do. And so if you follow the process, everything will shake out, but you can't judge your month off of one day or one week. You got to look at it in a 6 week average and look at it quarterly and look at your numbers annually too.
Yeah.
But the way I prep for my appointments is I've got a couple core carriers that I love and I kind of stick to them between American Amicable, Mutual of Omaha, Americo, Foresters, SBLI. Those are some of the main, Fidelity and Guarantee. Those are some of our main carriers that we send a majority of our clients to. And it's easy to the longer you've been doing this, you can kind of know what carrier is going to approve people
Yep.
based off of medical history. But one of the cool parts about Symmetry is we've got lots of tech and software. And so we've got a piece of tech called Virtual Mentor where you can literally put in your client's info, age, height and weight, medications, health background, and it'll spit out what carrier and product they
Yeah.
qualify for. You can run
Yeah.
a quote form right there. And that's how I learned kind of underwriting guides. In addition to that, I'll get risk assessments because you want to minimize the amount of policies that are getting declined. You want to get people approved because we don't get paid till that happens, and the
Yeah.
family's not protected till that happens. Do you prep any differently?
No, but I was gonna make a joke there. I was like, we have all these carriers. You're telling me you don't know all 50 carriers, every product they have inside and out. Like I get that question. I get actually new agents telling me that all the time. They're like, well, I don't want to start dialing until I know all the products. And I'm
Mm,
like, dude, I don't know all the products, right? Like I prep for the appointment before it using a small number of core carriers, like you, honestly, the same ones as you that I know how they work. I know generally they issue quickly for XYZ medical concerns. Um, and it blows my mind that sometimes people are like, I need to know them all. But yeah, very similar. I use Virtual Mentor sometimes. Symmetry's got this big, I'm old school. They've got this big Excel spreadsheet with a list of every single medical concern. And so I just go down, okay, this will work. Okay, that won't work. We got to look at this carrier. And then I pick the one that's the cheapest and start there. And then if they, for whatever reason, don't get approved, that's the interesting thing with insurance, right? Is the cheaper products are the harder ones to get approved for typically.
yep, yep,
Um, and then you're paying a little more in premium because you're a little more unhealthy and it's a little morbid, but the carrier's more worried you're going to die.
right,
And so I like to start low with one that I think we have a high chance of getting approved for, right? Like it's when you're running 15 appointments a week, the last thing you want to be doing is, okay, I submitted, 3, 4 grand yesterday. Wow, they all got declined. So now on top of running my appointments today, I've got to get back with those people, get them to, understand this new product, the new price point, and then resubmit that app, get them approved the first time, make your life way
right,
easier.
exactly. So when it comes to selling, cool part about insurance now is, I mean, every company's a little bit different. You can go into an office, you can meet with your team like that, you can work from home, and sell over the phone or over Zoom. And so, in before COVID, we were going to people's houses. We weren't door knocking strangers. There are companies that do that, and more power to you if that's what you're up to. That is not for the faint of heart, but we would literally, I would drive. I lived in Virginia, and I would drive to Delaware to go run some appointments because that's where the best leads were. And when COVID happened, we switched to we weren't going into people's homes, and so we would run the same appointment the same way, just over Zoom or
Right.
over the phone, and it cut down on our time driving a good bit. And so now the way that we do it, for the most part, is closing virtually, and it's you got to have a little bit of a different skill set because we're dealing with older clients. You're getting personal information, and you want to be above board as far as like legal goes, and operating with integrity. And the way that I follow it pretty much is what we call the real system, and this is kind of like a framework of what to talk about when. It's kind of like an outline of your sales presentation,
Yeah.
essentially. Now, uh, the main thing that I think makes us different is we're responding to people who requested our coverage. And so
Right.
our job's a lot easier than if we were having to prospect and turn strangers into leads. We're
Yes.
talking to people who saw an ad about mortgage protection. This will pay off your house or part of your home or make the mortgage payment if you die or become terminally ill. They fill out their info, age, birthday, height and weight, phone number, their spouse's info, and they send it back to us. And
Right.
so that's who we're talking to. And so a lot of the front end work is done for us. All we're doing is setting up an appointment and then helping them find the plan that fits their needs and budget best.
And
And
just
so,
one thing
yeah,
on that, I don't want to cut you off because the real system is great, but
yeah,
when you're coming into an appointment, right, with somebody who has responded to a lead that, nobody else has gotten in touch with yet, one of the, Joe Martinez always says that he's, a bigwig in our agency, and but he really changed my mindset. Like it's not really a sale, right? Because how many times have they said yes before you get on that call? They said yes to the
yeah,
ad, right? Hey, I'm interested in this, and then we get in touch with them. We set the appointment. They said yes to that, and then they showed up to the appointment. That is three yeses before you have even opened your mouth running through how the product works. And
yeah.
so part of the real system is, be assumptive because they've already indicated that they want this, right? We just got to match them with the right piece. So I didn't want to go too far off on that,
Mm.
but I think that's an important thing to think about.
It is. The people we're talking to are high intent.
Yeah.
And we have older leads too that are much cheaper, that have been in the system for a few months. But we're just talking about fresh leads that come in the week we get them,
Yeah.
essentially. And so the real system, it stands for rapport, emotion, assumption, and locking it down. I did not come up with this. This was in place when I got my license, and I just follow it to a T. But then, why don't you break down the R, the rapport section for us? Because you got to lay a foundation before you start talking about death and money with a stranger.
Yeah.
That's the reality of what we do, and they got to like you first. So how do we do that, man?
Well, I come on, I'm casual. I'll, confirm where they are, ask them how long they've lived there, any family in the area. And just now part of this, I've also generally established a bit of rapport in the booking call. So they know who I am.
Yep.
I'm asking them, why is this important to you? I think getting into the why is really important, before you start showing them options, right? Like someone doesn't tell you why they want something, there's no point in trying to sell them something that you don't even know if they need. So I think that two call really helps. I will say when I first started, I would spend, 10, 15 minutes just trying to build that rapport. And I think you have to be careful because that can start to raise some sales resistance. They're like, all right, well, he's asking for my kids' names and where they go to school and what sports, like he's going to beat me over the head with this in a hard close. So I think, and that comes with experience, right? And understanding who it is you're talking to. Like, I'm sure you've noticed this. Sometimes with someone a little older, they might want to just shoot the breeze a little bit for 5, 10 minutes
Yep.
beforehand. I'm not going to stop them from doing that. Someone a little
Yeah.
younger, professional, I'm generally all right, here's where I've got you. How long you been there? You got any family in the area? I had this as your main concern. Cool. Here's my role. Which I think you can build that rapport throughout the appointment as well. How about you? How do you think about it?
I mean, I do everything the same you do. I don't have a script for building rapport. I think if you do have a script for it, you're not going to be as authentic and real. And that's your best attribute, I think, as a salesperson is being authentic with the person you're talking with. And so I
Right.
ask them about their family, same things you do. And I really, you want to gauge the person you're talking to, because if they're quick to want to get down to business and you're asking them like, all right, what kind of dog do you have? You're gonna just create a roadblock for yourself that you're gonna have to overcome because you're wasting their time. And
Right.
so I'll tell you a quick story. I had a lady earlier this week, 75 years old, and we get on the phone, and one of the first things she says is, "All right, Elijah, how long is this going to take?" She was busy. She wasn't being rude. She was just letting me know, "Hey, I've got about 15 or 20 minutes, so we could talk about the weather and where I live, or we can get down to it."
Right.
And so I just shot her straight. Like I kept it real with her, and gave her my license number, built enough rapport to where she would listen to me. And we went over options and bam fammed, book a meeting from a meeting because I wasn't going to close it right then and there. A lot of times we do a one call close, other times it's a multiple sit thing.
Yep.
And we booked a meeting from a meeting for this morning, and we were able to close it then. And so building rapport is huge because without rapport, you're going to really struggle with the second section, which is building emotion.
Yep.
And in my opinion, with life insurance in particular, that's what we're focused on. Life insurance and mortgage protection. It is an emotional sale.
100%.
It's a logical product, logical solution, but people don't buy it for themselves because it's there to benefit their family.
Right.
And so it's an emotionally charged decision. And our job is to help kind of resurrect that emotion that they had when they first sent in the form. And
Yep.
so how do we do that? The best way to establish emotion is by getting really good at asking high quality questions. And I want to brag on a guy named Jeremy Miner here for a second. If you're in sales at all, you've heard of this guy. He's come across your Instagram Discover page. His stuff pops up multiple times a day for me. But he did a training for our company, I think 2 years ago, and went over the neuro emotional persuasive questioning tactics to really help bring the guard down and help pinpoint the problem that they're looking to solve. Because you can be really surface level, but then you're going to get to think about it, or you're going to get the let me talk to my spouse and pray on it, and talk to my dog about it, and I'll get back to you sometime. And so we really want to be precise with the questions we're asking. What questions do you ask, Xander, to build emotion? And I'll fill in any that I ask that you don't. But I know we went to the same training, so what we're doing
Yeah.
is pretty similar, if not identical. What kind of questions do you ask, man?
Hey, what would, God forbid, something were to happen to you? Like, what would things look like for family member that they have said would get the house? That's probably my main one, right? Because
Yeah.
that'll kind of set the frame. Like if they and Jeremy's great at this. He's like, if they give you the answer that you know you need, don't dilly-dally and keep drilling down, right? Like if they say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm just really concerned. Like, I'm the breadwinner, Mary's a stay-at-home mom. We don't have a ton in savings. And so, like, I don't know. She'd probably be homeless. And, like, we got two kids.
Mm.
I don't know what that would look like. I'm like, all right, I don't need to sit there beating them over the head about, I got the answer. I can move into, okay, well, here's really the three ways that people think about it. Um,
Yeah.
if someone's giving you surface level answers, I'll turn it back on you. What do you like to ask if
Yeah.
someone's like, I don't know, I saw it, I'm shopping around.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of a surface level answer. If somebody tells me something like, "Oh, I'm just shopping around," or "just wanted to know what it costs," I'm going to ask them something like, "Well, Xander, what was it about the ad that stood out to you, or what was really your main concern regarding mortgage protection?" That's one I'll ask. I'll ask another like, "Well, if something happened to you, let's say 2 weeks from now, God forbid, could your wife still afford the mortgage payment, or would your kids be able to keep the house? How much life insurance do you have currently? Is it enough to cover the home?" Um, Another one I'll ask is, how long have you been thinking about mortgage protection? Is it something that's been on your mind for a while, or kind of recent? Um, you really want to dig into their why, about like what prompted them to fill out the request. Another one I'll ask is, what this is I got this directly from Jeremy Miner. What has you looking at this now versus kicking this down the road like a lot of people do who end up leaving their family with a financial burden? Um, Off the record, why was putting this coverage in place
I
important to
love
you
off the record.
for
I
your family?
love off the record.
Those are just some examples. Now we have a whole training on. I mean, we could go for an hour just on building emotion,
Yeah.
but you want to go from rapport to emotion, and you really want to be good at listening. You don't want to just repetitively ask these questions, get an answer, and then not really pay attention to what people are saying. I've had, or were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, just because, it's a lot more powerful when you're just saying back what they said to you, right? You're like, okay, so
Mm,
you had said, you know, the family would be homeless. Like, you know, they're sold already. You know what I mean? As opposed to
yeah,
being like, so here's what this would do for you before you get that. Then it feels more like a sale. And in the other, it feels more like well, shoot, that's not good. Like, what are we going to do about that? Um,
yeah,
and it just feels so much less like a sale when you're using their own words and they're not casually asked, casually received, right?
yeah, yeah. And I really do believe, man, the sale takes place in this section. Them giving these answers is really where you close the deal. The next section is kind of just where you pinpoint what their budget is,
Right.
or what is comfortable for them. And so the A section, the assumption, is really where we kind of break down the three main types of mortgage protection. And I want to be kind of kind of broad or surface level with the three types, just because that could be a whole training in of itself. But
Yeah.
when we're helping a family with a policy designed to take care of their house, I really only break down three ways we could do that.
Do you do all
We have
three for every client you talk to, or do you? I just want to preface this for anybody listening, because mortgage protection is a concept, right? Like their
yes,
AMM has a policy where you need to have the lender's information, but for the majority of these, it's life insurance solving the need of mortgage protection. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, it's life insurance for the home, and I explain all three to anybody I'm talking to. But if there's somebody that I know is not going to qualify for one,
yeah,
I frame it in such a way that they know that, and so that way they're not picking a plan that they know they're going to get declined for. And so I'm strategic with it, but really we lay out three types of life insurance for the house, right? You got a full mortgage payoff. So let's say somebody's house is, we'll just say 280 grand.
yep.
Um, a full mortgage payoff would be a term policy for 280,000. And the policies we do come with some living benefits for critical, chronic, and terminal illness. That's one option. The second is the partial payoff. So maybe 200,000 or 150 pays off a good chunk of the home. That's a really good fit for people who already have existing life insurance or maybe plan on paying their house off early, or maybe the full payoff just isn't in their budget. Partial payoff's a great option.
Or they're
The
both
third
working.
one, what's that?
Or like, husband and wife, they're both working, right? The wife could still afford some of the mortgage. It's
Yeah,
just the husband makes more money, or maybe the wife makes more money, and it would be difficult to do it all on their own.
spot on. And then the third one, we use a whole life policy for it, and we call it either critical period coverage or I've dubbed it mortgage payment protection. And it's a policy that is best for people who are in that senior market, maybe between the ages of 65 and 85. They've got a mortgage. Term is not going to be a good fit for them because of price or underwriting. And in most cases, their kids are grown, and their family would end up selling the house or maybe refinance, or maybe they just need time to get adjusted with the mortgage if something were to happen to the spouse.
Yeah.
And so mortgage payment protection is a whole life policy that we designed to pay their mortgage. Let's say their mortgage is $2,000. We would work up a few options that would pay it for maybe 6 months or a year or 2 years, pays out to them in a lump sum, and then their family can use that money to buy them time so that they're not at risk of losing the house. It's a good fit for some, not a good fit for other people, but it's really good for older folks who maybe got some health issues or or living on a fixed income, things like that.
Yeah.
And depending on who we're talking to, we'll describe those three in such a way that it'll sound like the one that they need. For example, if somebody had cancer 3 years ago, you would be naive to give them term insurance prices because they're not going to get approved.
Ever.
And
Yeah.
so we're describing it in such a way that they know which one is going to be the best option, and then we kind of just go over some prices. Do you do anything different in the assumption phase, or what would you do maybe after explaining the three?
I think the only difference is with that the third option, I'll very commonly refer to it as equity protection, right? Because if
That's a good one.
it's
Yeah.
like you said, someone's older, they've been in the house 20 years, right? Maybe they bought it at a good time. They've been paying that mortgage for 20 years now. They've got, I always talk about it, you've got 200 grand trapped within the walls of your home. Your family isn't going to move into that house, right? But wouldn't you rather the family benefit from all those years of hard work you've put into paying the mortgage as opposed to the bank getting it? And
Yeah.
every time they're like, yeah, I hate my bank. Like, I don't want them getting that. Um, and then I will, if they're under the age of 70, I'll also talk about equity protection plus. I'll be like, look,
Yeah. What
trips,
is
bumps,
that?
falls. So it's really just combining the critical period mortgage payment protection, which, so no matter what, their family will have 6, 12, 24 months to figure out whether we're going to sell the home. Maybe they do want to move into it and they're going to sell their current home. Maybe they're going to put a renter in it, whatever. They don't have to come out of pocket for that mortgage, month one. Um, and then in the event that they pass due to an accident, then the whole house is paid for because accidental coverage, super cheap, no, medical underwriting. And let's be honest, this kind of thing happens to a lot of people. Tons of people will have a fall and, unfortunately, 3, 4, 5 months down the line, their health has deteriorated seriously and they end up passing. We work with carriers that have fairly comprehensive accidental policies. So up to 12 months, as long as it is from that accident, they'll pay the whole thing off. And it's, even if they're 65, it's like 50, $60 a month for 300 grand in coverage.
Yeah.
So combining that with the equity protection, like, cool, if something crazy happens to you, whole house is paid for. But no matter what, we know that the bank's not going to be taking this. Um,
Hmm. That's good. It's
I want to
solving
ask, I wanted to
yeah, go
ask
ahead.
you though, you know, I still run into people who are in their, 60s and 70s. They're like, nope, I want the whole thing paid for. And so even if I
Yeah.
talk about the equity protection plus with the accidental, they're like, yeah, but it's only going to pay the house um, if I am in an accident. And so I've started almost talking down about the full payoff when I'm talking about it, or sometimes I'll even just talk about a partial payoff as the first option.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Dude, I preface it if I'm talking to somebody who's, say, 65 and up, and I know that the full mortgage payoff is going to cost half as much as their mortgage payment.
Yep.
And so I would never recommend something like that. And I straight up tell them that. Like if I was talking to, I used this earlier this week. I was talking to a lady who was 74 and she was like, yeah, I need 150 grand to pay off the whole loan. I was like, we could do that. Her name was Sandy. And I was like, but Sandy, it's going to cost you close to $800 a month if we did that. She was a smoker too. And, and I was like, if you could afford it, if you could afford an extra $800 a month, I don't know if buying a term policy in your 70s is a good idea. You might be better off just paying off the house early and putting it towards principal. And she was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so then I was like, well, that's kind of why we have this third option, mortgage payment protection, because it's designed to buy your family time if something happens to you to maybe pull that equity out of the house, sell it, rent it out, do what they need to do. But after you're gone, they're not going to be burdened with your $2,000 mortgage payment right after you die, or
Right.
they're not going to burn through all of your existing life insurance paying for the house. Because there's some crazy stats out there, man. There's like, I want to say it's like, don't quote me on this, but I heard a stat somewhere. It was like 55% of Americans either don't have life insurance or don't have enough to pay off their home. And so if something happened to them, I mean, they're going to be in a bad spot financially. And we see it all the time. People putting up a GoFundMe on Facebook to pay for a funeral or burial expenses or whatever. And the products we sell solve that problem. But how we frame our solutions is what determines if the people we're talking to, our prospects, can also see the value in it. And so I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. Simplifying it is the name of the game. You have to be, as an agent, an expert in the products you're selling. You don't need to be an expert with every single carrier you're contracted with. I got really good at like 3 to 5. And with those 3 to 5, I sell like 2 or 3 products with them. And so it didn't take a long time to get really good at those. And if you can, because confused people don't buy, do they, Xander?
No, I wouldn't, people, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. What do they say? If somebody's confused, they're going to say something like, well, I need to think about it, or I need to talk to my financial advisor about it.
Yeah.
Or my favorite one, I need to call my grandson. I get people who are like, I need to reach out to my family member and just ask them. And it's typically because you didn't simplify it enough. They don't understand it. They don't like you or trust you, or it's too expensive.
Yep.
It's one of those 3.
Yep.
And so being clear is kind, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. And, one other thing I did want to hit on that we didn't even talk about during, I guess, the presentation phase is a lot of these, particularly the term products, have living benefits. And dude, it's like 85% of foreclosures are due to medical concerns. And so honestly, I've had some clients who their main thing is they just want the living benefits even more than the actual life insurance. Like the living benefits are what they care about.
Yeah, dude. Legal in general, one of the carriers that we work with literally just rolled out a simplified issue term up to $1 million. It might be up to 2 million, depending on their age, with no cost living benefits for terminal, chronic, and critical. And their critical illness coverage includes 16 different ailments. I didn't even know there were that many, bro. But what that means is if somebody, if somebody gets cancer or has a heart attack or a stroke or 3rd-degree burns or organ failure or what have you, 90% of that death benefit pays out to them early while they're still alive. And that is incredibly valuable to younger people who are still working, who may have something happen health related that prevents them from working and earning an income. Because a lot of people think that their most valuable asset is their home, right? But it's actually your ability to earn an income. And if something happens that prevents you from doing that, you're going to need some insurance to mitigate that risk of loss. And so that's what we solve.
I was looking at the prices. I'm going to be writing a lot of LNG because like I was looking at it,
bro.
SBLI, I love writing with SBLI. It's generally a lot more affordable because they don't do the living benefits, right? They might do terminal illness.
Just terminal. That's it.
But they don't do critical or chronic. LGA now does all 3, and it is like $10-20 a month more expensive. So LNG is going to be getting a lot of business from me.
And they have up to table 12 underwriting. So like people who would otherwise get declined for term, they're accepting, which is cool. I'm excited to write it. I've heard their e-app is a little longer than some of the others, but that's not a big deal.
I think I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe that the client can actually put in their own banking info. Like it sends them a link to do that, which, I think that generally comes into play more with older clients, right? Like they've been beaten over the head. Don't give anyone your social. Don't give out your banking info. I don't run into it as much as I did when I started, but if it happens, it's generally someone over the age of 60 or 70.
Yeah. When it comes to the assumption phase of the real system, when I say assumptive, I'm not asking if they want to buy it. I'm not asking, do you want to fill out an application? I'm being assumptive because we've gotten this far because they want to buy. And my job now is to show them a few prices that fit their budget and then help them get approved for the one that they choose. And so typically I'll show 3 different prices. Let's say we're talking to somebody who is 45, non-smoker, perfect health, $300,000 house. I'm going to show them 300 grand, maybe 250 and 200,000. Maybe I'll throw some accidental in there, or maybe a cashback option with America or something like that. But I'm typically showing three prices, and I'll go down the line. I'll be like, all right, Xander, this first one, $162 for 300,000 pays off your whole house if something happens to you. Option B for 250 is 120, and then option C is $82 a month. Between these three, which one fits your needs and your budget best? I say it just like that, and then you want to shut up. You're going to be tempted to butt in and say something, but you want to let that silence go as long as it needs to before they answer. And
First person who talks loses, right?
That's what Alex Hormozy says.
Yeah.
And when they pick, that's when they buy. And sometimes they tell me, oh, well, none of these fit my budget. If that's the case, then we just move it down and go with a smaller one. Or sometimes they'll ask, can I get more? Can I more than cover my house? Or can you work up an in-between amount? Or can we do a 20-year term? And I let them answer first before we start making changes to it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to locking it down, the way that we do it is when they pick an option, we essentially pivot straight to an application and start filling it out right then and there, getting their address, personal info, and getting an e-signature and getting it over to an underwriter. Do you do anything different here, or how do you normally lock it down, man?
That's pretty much how I do things. I think that really the only thing I'd add is not every appointment, not every sale that you make is someone's going to say, yes, Elijah, I want option B, the 200,000 at 143 a month. That works great. A lot of times they'll say, oh, that's not that bad. That's a yes. Yeah. I think we could do that. That's a yes. Like, you just got to read in between the lines a little bit, and then exactly like you said, all right, cool. Let me get that application pulled up here. What'd you say I don't think I got your middle initial. And then just roll right in. Now, with that, I think once you've gotten to the application, you're usually pretty good, right? If you're running Zoom appointments, highly recommend sharing your screen so they can follow along with you. If you're over the phone, Crankwheel is a great resource. I like the client to be able to see what we're doing. Again, particularly with that older crowd, someone's in their 30s or 40s, it did kind of feel it out a little bit. I think the only hurdle that a lot of people have, and I think a lot of times this is mental, is you got to get their social and you got to get their banking info. I was nervous about that when I first started.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
And, I kind of do it casually now, and I do it at the end. So most applications, the social is one of the first things they ask for, but I'll confirm all of their info. Like, okay, first, last, we'll make sure that's spelled correctly. Assuming you got approved, what address would you want them to send all these documents to? They give me their address. Cool. Is this the best phone number for you? Is this your email? So I confirmed a lot of stuff. And then I'll usually act like I forgot something. I'll be like, oh, your social. Just kind of, almost like I forgot it. But of course we need that. And then with banking, I learned this from one of the agents who came before me. She's an absolute rock star. Her framing for this is always, do you want to put a checking or a savings account on file with insert carrier name? I love putting on file, and you give them the option of checking or savings, not just, okay, what's your account number? But I think those are the two things that agents can get stumped on and in their head about. How do you handle those? Do you do it differently?
I don't do it differently. I think knowing that what you make a big deal is a big deal. If you start saying stuff like, hey, I know you probably don't want to give this over the phone, but I need your social. It's how they verify who you are. I'm sorry, I got to ask. If you preface it like that, you're going to get pushback of, well, why do you need my social?
Right.
Which I get asked probably once a week. And I'm just like, well, Xander, that's how they verify who you are and do a prescription check. All insurance is going to ask for this. And then I just wait till they give it to me. And every now and then, I've gotten people who were like, I can't give that to you. And I'm like, well, let me know when you change your mind, because I can't help you get approved without this. And so if you decide this is something you really need, just know that they're going to ask for that. Sometimes I like letting people know what I'm going to do before I do it. It's kind of like the doctor's approach. You know, when you go, if you go to the doctor, they let you know if they're going to give you a shot before they do it, or if they're going to prescribe you something. This is what it's for. This is how you take it. This is why I'm prescribing it. When we're running right before writing the application, I'll let them know, hey, I'm going to get some personal info from you, driver's license number, name of your doctor. They'll ask for bank info at the end of the application because whenever it gets approved, that's how the recurring premium comes out. You can pick whatever day you want. And I just give them a heads up sometimes. Most of the time, I don't get any issue with it because I establish trust and credibility from the get go, giving them my producer number and license number. They can look me up on the Department of Insurance's site. And so there's no, I tell them where I live. I've built a lot of rapport, letting people know where in North Carolina I'm at. And stuff like that just helps them know, all right, this is a real person. They're just doing their job. Nothing shifty going on here. I don't sound like I'm talking to them from a call center in India. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so no offense to call centers, but you wanna establish that trust and credibility, especially if you're talking about something as intimate, personal, and important as insurance.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to locking it down, I don't really spend too much time here. I essentially ask them, Xander, we got this application submitted. It should be approved in the next couple of days. How do you feel knowing that this coverage is in place? Is it going to give you some peace of mind? Are you going to sleep better at night knowing that if something happened to you, Maya's good? Like, I'm just reaffirming what we did and making sure that they like it and they feel good about the decision they
Yeah.
made.
Yeah. I will I do that, and I also tell them like, hey, one of the things I take a lot of pride in is making the right recommendations to the families and individuals that I sit with. So before I get out of your hair, I'd love to hear kind of in your own words what it was that we did here today. And I want to
Mm,
make sure they understand exactly what we did, you know. And usually, I'm not fishing for compliments. Usually they give you a compliment. They're like, "You were so helpful. Thank you for breaking this down, helping me navigate this maze." What we've got is, we did a full payoff, so God forbid something happens to me, I know that my wife is going to be fine. And then also if I get sick, then, this will help pay the bills too. I'm like, perfect.
yeah,
I'll
done
keep you
deal.
posted as soon as I hear anything.
What's your follow up? Let's say you get a policy approved. I think this is where newer agents or maybe separated from people who've been doing it for a while in the follow up, what does your communication with that family look like after the sale is done?
So I'll shoot them a text saying, like, once they get approved, I'll shoot them a text saying, hey, congrats on being so healthy. Looks like they approved your XYZ carrier. I love to use the carrier name, right? They're big.
Yeah.
That's a bigger name than I am. Got a lot of trust behind it.
Yep.
Americo approved your policy. You should see that draft in the next 24, 48 hours. Then, if it's depending on whether they wanted a physical or a virtual copy of their policy, I'll be like, as soon as you've got that, let's get back on the phone, go over that with a fine-tooth comb, make sure you understand everything and your beneficiaries know that you have this, where to find it. God forbid they need to actually use this. We want to make sure they know that you've got this. Not
Mm.
everybody takes me up on that. But I like
Yeah.
to offer.
Same.
I like them to know that I'm here. Tell them to save my number. How about you?
I do the same thing. I love booking a follow up appointment to review the policy. I think that'll help your persistency a lot. Not everybody's going to take you up on it. Some people, you did such a good job running the appointment the first time, they got it. They don't need to review it.
Yeah.
But I love asking for referrals after we fill out the application. Hey, let me get the number of your beneficiary. I want to make sure they know what we did today because billions of dollars per year go unclaimed in insurance death benefits because the beneficiary didn't know you had a policy. And so I want to make sure that they're aware of what we did. And if they need coverage too, I can give them options for it. Love getting referrals that way or just nonchalantly asking, hey, who in your circle needs to have a conversation like this? Who's important to you who maybe just bought a house or just got married or just had a kid and just needs to look at this type of protection and make sure their family's taken care of. Do you know of anybody? And sometimes people will give you names, sometimes not so much. But if you never ask, it's going to be rare you'll get any. And this year in particular, or this week, I wrote 4 apps on referrals just this week,
Let's go.
and which is more than most, and
Yeah,
or more than most weeks on average for me. But all just because I asked. And a referral is the best lead you could possibly get. It's almost a guaranteed close, instant trust, instant rapport, and it just makes you that much more profitable as an
yeah,
insurance agent.
totally agree. I generally recommend run two-legged appointments. So if it's a husband and wife, make sure they're both there. The close is
Yeah.
easier. They're not going to give you the, oh, well, let me go talk to my wife. Great. It's been a long day, Elijah. I'm going to mute out for a second. You guys chat with each other about which one makes sense. I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back. Then they
Mm.
have time to think about it. However, it's not always possible, right? Sometimes, as hard as I try to get them both there, they're like, we're just on different schedules. The other week, I wrote a gentleman and then I wrote his wife the next week. When we get on the appointment, he's already talked to her about exactly what this is. She knows who I am. We were in the app in under 10 minutes, right? Like,
That's the beauty of referrals right there, bro.
yeah, yeah. So it can be, referrals are awesome. And you got to ask for them to get them.
Gotta ask. So, in summary, running an insurance sales appointment, you got to start with knowing your product. If you don't know your stuff, you're going to come off as incompetent and you're going to struggle.
Yep.
And second is have a script for your appointment or an outline. Ours is the real system, rapport, emotion, assumption, locking it down. Third is be clear on how the product works so that your client's not confused. Get really good at asking questions so that you can uncover the why, build emotion, and get the deal done there. And then follow up with client care. Ask for referrals. Make sure that they're cool with the product we did and they feel good about it and that they understand it. And rinse and repeat
Yeah.
day in and day out. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's a great bow to put on it. And it kind of we touched on this, but keep it simple. Like keep it simple. The more complicated you make it, the more think about it you're gonna get. You can know these products inside and out, but if you start going through, it depends on the client, but you start going through, this is American Amicable, Home Certainty, 25-year, this is gonna cover, these specific critical, like, no, most people don't want that. They want to know how much coverage it is. Maybe, all the companies we work with have been around a century. So I'll mention that
Yeah.
sometimes. And then if you die, it pays, right? Like
Yeah.
keep it simple unless they ask, in which, to your point, you got to know your product so you can answer those questions.
You got it. You got it. Well, I mean, we could keep going, but I think that's a good stopping point for how we run appointments and how you can simplify your process as an insurance agent to get really consistent and get really profitable quickly. Even if you're brand new, you can do this. Um, and we should be dropping an episode next Friday too. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out. As always, we'll leave our Instagram handles, emails in the description. So if you want to reach out to either of us to learn more, just let us know. And happy to chat. Have a great week, everybody.
Have a good week.